Warm welcome to our hybrid session, part of Food Forward 2025. So, we are gathered here for Reset, Dialogues to Reduce Food Loss and Waste in India. And this particular session is also a part of the Food Forward 2025 webinar series, an initiative by WRI India under the Friends of Champions 12.3 India Network initiative. I'm Anar, and I'm very delighted to host today's session on exploring the climate potential of reducing food loss and waste. For this session, we are joined by participants both in the room in Delhi and online via Zoom. Thank you to all of you for being here. And to begin with, I'm very pleased to invite Dr. Liz Goodwin, Senior Fellow at WRI, to deliver the keynote address. She will be throwing a little bit of light on Friends of Champions 12.3 India Network and bring in a global perspective on how this can be, the potential for climate wins can be explored through reducing food loss and waste. So can we project Liz here? Over to you, Liz.
To join you today. I wanted to start, I can't see my slides. Have you got my first slide up, please? So I wanted to basically start by talking about the scale of the problem. And you'll see on my next slide, please. So the actual food system is responsible for around a quarter of all greenhouse gas emissions. So the actual environmental impact of the food system is huge in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, land use, water use. It has a big impact on the environment. And you can see that if it's responsible for a quarter of greenhouse gas emissions, then it's going to have a big impact on climate change. And what is more worrying is the fact that then it is a very inefficient system. So it's estimated that around 40% of all the food that's produced is either lost or wasted at some point along the supply chain. And that 40% of food that is lost or wasted means that wasting food is actually responsible for around 8 to 10% of greenhouse gas emissions, and also 12% of methane emissions from landfill and from production. So that in itself is the food waste is a massive part of the overall problem. And that inefficiency also costs the global economy more than $1 trillion US dollars every year. That's quite an old figure, so it's probably even higher given the recent years of food inflation, price inflation. And at the same time, it's exacerbating global hunger. We know that despite all this food being produced and then lost or wasted, we still have a large number of people who are food insecure. And in fact, it's estimated that in 2025, we'll waste so much food that we could feed every food insecure person on Earth, and that's more than 2 billion people, 3 full meals a day for a year, and still have food left over. So we're basically producing enough food for the entire global population. But because we have such an inefficient system and we waste and lose too much of the food, we're not able to feed the population that we currently have on Earth. My next slide, please. So there are some huge benefits, I'm sure you can see from having an inefficient food system, huge benefits from reducing food loss and waste. I think we can look at it in two different ways. In today's economy, every resource counts. So maximizing the food isn't just about minimizing the waste. It's about creating new opportunities for efficiency, for growth and long-term resilience. So this is about, for businesses, it's about making your business more efficient, helping it to grow and helping to build resilience. And that's the same for governments. It's about ensuring your food system is resilient and provides food security for all the population. And you can look at it from a different angle as well. It's not just about the efficiency angle, but it's about caring and taking care. We put a lot of effort into producing all that food. It's a very simple idea that caring about that food that we've produced, we're taking care of it as we grow it, we buy it, and we eat it. And less waste means more value for everyone involved. So I think there are a number of asks for businesses to be more efficient and reduce food waste, for consumers to use food wisely and to make the most of what they buy. Our ask of governments is that we want policies that are going to unlock the potential of food. So policies that are supportive for the businesses to make the food system more efficient. And we want an efficient system that maximizes nutrition and minimizes the amount of food and amount of waste sent to landfill. If we could reduce food loss and waste by 50%, we would reduce greenhouse gas emissions by around 5%, and we'd save the economy, that's businesses and people, hundreds of millions of dollars a year. So I don't think anyone can argue that reducing food waste and food loss is a bad idea. It's going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, save land, save water, and save us all money. And if we could improve food security and resilience in our food system by having that more efficient food system, it would mean there is more food available to those who need it. I'm sure there are lots of inefficiencies where we've got food being wasted in parts of the world where food is where you don't have as many food insecure people. But actually, I know that we have food insecure people in every town, every village across the world. So actually, it's a bit simplistic to say that it's the problem is that the food's in the wrong place. That's not just the problem. Next slide, please. So we've been advocating in WRI a strategy for tackling food loss and waste. So the initial point is that food is lost and wasted all the way along the supply chain. So right through from production on the left-hand side of this slide through to consumption. So it's lost at the farm level, it's lost in handling and storage, it's lost in the processing and packaging, in the manufacturing, in the distribution at the retailer or in the restaurants, and in our own homes. So it's a problem everywhere, and we all waste food and we all lose food. So the strategy is basically Target, Measure, Act. And I'm sure you'll hear people talking about Target, Measure, Act as an overall approach. You set targets, it says you think it's important, it sets ambition, and ambition motivates action. It's a great sign of leadership, either by governments or businesses, to set a target which says, I care about this and I'm going to make something happen. And then measurement is really fundamental, because if you don't have measurement, you don't know where your problems are. As soon as you start to measure, you see the size of the problem, and actually you see the size of the opportunity. So as soon as you start measuring, you think, right, I've got a problem at that point in my supply chain. I've got a problem at that point in my operations. That's where I'm going to make most savings if I tackle that hotspot. So measurement leads to you managing the hotspots. And ultimately, of course, what matters is action. And it applies to everybody. So everyone has a role to play. Everybody in an organisation has a role to play. Everyone in a government has a role to play. And everyone in a household has a role to play. And my next slide, please. So the Friends of Champions in India is a fantastic network of organisations. It's a network of companies and organisations who are working in the food system in India. So you understand the issues in India, the constraints, the opportunities, where the likely hotspots are going to be, and where the best savings can be made. It's a great place to share experiences and learning. And it means that you can share experiences and learning that are relevant to your geography, your local context, your local politics, your issues, your challenges, your weather problems, your whatever local issues are, you can talk about them in that context. It's also a space to challenge and encourage, because if you treat this like a pre-competitive space, it's an opportunity to share, oh, well, this worked and this one doesn't work, and I've tried that and this tries that, because we're all trying to get to the same place, to actually make the food system more efficient. Now, part of that is making your organisation more efficient as well, but the overall goal is making the food system more efficient. it's a place where you can get access to expertise and knowledge. I mean, a lot of organisations don't have all the expertise and knowledge that they would like to have in their own organisations, but by working with other organisations and with the rest of the Friends network, you can access expertise and knowledge about issues and solutions. And actually, I think that the Friends Network in India is a great example that other countries and regions are increasingly looking at as a model to follow. When Champions 12.3 started, it was a global coalition. And now we have these evolving and emerging local networks that can be far more tailored to the local situation. You're growing the same sorts of crops, you're growing the same sorts of food, you're handling the same sorts of food, you're making the same sorts of products. And we're actually seeing increasing numbers of similar networks developing. So there's one in New Zealand, for example, and there's also an emerging one in Europe. And I know there are discussions going on about developing similar networks in other countries as well around the world and other regions. I think you also have a collective voice to influence Indian policymakers because you were all facing the same policy constraints. And I mentioned earlier about the need for a positive policy environment that's going to help you to make the food system more efficient. You as the Friends Network can be a collective voice in India to influence policymakers and others in the Indian food system, be they trade associations, collectives, cooperatives, whoever it is. You can act as a joint voice. And my next slide, please. And I mentioned earlier that the Champions 12.3 Global Coalition was the first thing that was set up in this space. This was set up in 2015 when the SDGs were first formed, and it was set up to try to make sure that the world did achieve a 50% reduction in food loss and waste. And the main role of that global group is advocacy and leadership, but it's clearly acting at a global level, so it needs practitioners on the ground, like the Friends Network in India, to actually make change happen on the ground. And the members of the actual global coalition, they act and lead in their own organisations, but they also work down their supply chains and with others in the food system overall. And their role is to showcase best practice. But as I say, the global coalition relies on local expertise to drive on the ground action and also to provide all those learnings and insights that can then be showcased as best practice around the world. My last bullet point on that slide is just basically to say we don't have a representative from the Indian food system in India. And if there was somebody in the Friends Network, maybe we could draw on them to become part of the global coalition so that it really establishes a good link between the global coalition and the Friends Network in India, and it would help to foster better communications and collaboration between that global level and the local level. But I'm really looking forward to hearing how your event goes today and tomorrow. It's a fantastic opportunity to bring expertise together from across India to talk about some of the issues that you're all facing, some of the opportunities you all have. And with the ultimate goal of making this food system more efficient and to deliver more food, better value for money, make your businesses more efficient and allow you to grow better food security. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your session.
Thank you so much, Liz, for that very insightful message. And I truly agree that it's quite necessary to explore collaborative action right from at the national level to local level and strengthen our collective effort, especially as how we've done through Friends of Champions 12.3 India Network, which is now a network of over 30 organizations, and many of them are working on diverse issues, and some of them are also working on very similar issues. So how do we, go ahead and explore such synergies together? On that note, Now I'm happy to, take the session forward and move on to our panel discussion. And Liz, I hope you enjoy the discussion that's going to be conducted now. May I please invite Ms. Shweta Lamba, Program Manager, Food, Land and Water, WRI India, who will be leading the discussion. Shweta, please join me in welcoming Dr. Khushbu Gupta, Principal Research Associate, Alliance for Energy Efficient Economy. Ms. Malvika Gopinath, Manager, C Kinetics. Mr. Dheeraj Sandasani, Technical Advisor, Waste and Methane, C40 Cities. And Ms. Swarna Dutt, Senior Manager, Research and Policy, EPIC India. So each of the speakers will have 5 minutes to respond to Shweta's questions. And we'll have Chirag flag at the end of 4 minutes when we have 1 minute remaining. And yes, over to you, Shweta.
Hello, yes. Thank you, Anar. So this is a very interesting panel discussion that I've been looking forward to, particularly because climate is something everybody is talking about, but very few people understand. So we have tried our best to make this conversation more accessible to everybody, and questions are framed in a way that people understand the climate impact of food loss and food waste a little better after this discussion. And we'll be having questions, 2 rounds of questions, and then we'll be opening it for question and answers. So please keep a note of any questions that you may have for the end. Thank you. So I'll start with Khushbu. So the first question that I have for you is, like, AEEE is working on a lot of clean energy and sustainable cold chain solutions. So what are some energy efficient technology across the food supply chain that can both reduce losses and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, particularly in cold chain and storages? So over to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Shweta. Thanks, WRI, for giving me this platform to talk about it. I would like to start maybe with an example that some of the work that we are doing in the state of UP on cold storage modernization. Our program on शीत गृह सशक्तिकरण और नवीनीकरण की पहल संकल्प with the state and cold storage associations, what we are doing there is to identify and explore energy efficient solutions to modernize the existing ones. And for example, how can we improve the insulation part? How can we integrate the control systems to better maintain the temperature and humidity across the cold storages? At present, majority of these cold stores focus on potato and are single storages, and that's why it's important to integrate energy efficiency in it and make it more utilizable. To store multi-commodity and make it more helpful for the larger ecosystem. So these solutions, let me also give a little bit of context that right now around 500 gigawatt hour per year of energy is being consumed in these just potato cold storages, and which is roughly like 400 crore INR per year that has been invested in UP. So if we modernize them, the sort of energy savings that we'll be leading to would be about 120 gigawatt hour per year. That would be again close to 90 crore of savings per year that will be reflected in a monetary energy savings. But the more important thing is, because of these energy efficiency integrations and modernizing these facilities, we'll be also able to save a lot of save a lot of potatoes that is being spoiled, which is roughly 30 to 40%. And if I talk about numbers, it will be around 6 lakh metric ton per year, which is almost equivalent to a district, let's say Kannauj in UP, which has a population of 14 lakhs. They can be served foods, they can be served potatoes for a year if we just compare the sort of losses that can be avoided because of these modernization measures. So I think these are more on the numbers front, but then a lot of times what we are also not realizing is that when we talk about food losses, a lot of potatoes, or in this case potatoes, are not fit for consuming in the way it is, but it is some or the other way used or put it in samosas or in other delicacies that we have. So again, the quality is being compromised, though it is not lost at a larger level if we see. So these energy efficiency integrations measures that can be applied to cold storages, the existing cold storages, can help us have more better quality produce to larger population. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Also, I'll move on to Malvika now. So what has been your approach, like Sea Kinetics, to upscale sustainable and energy efficient solutions to reduce food loss? And also, what are these sustainable energy efficient solutions? What has been the learnings from the same, particularly the project that you're leading?
Thanks, Shweta, and thanks, WRI, for having me. So at Sea Kinetics, we have been working on this program called Scaling Up of Green Agri-Based Micro Cold Storages Solutions, called SUGAM. So I think the context is familiar to everyone, that we live in a country where an average farmer household makes around 10,000 rupees a month. And in case of perishables, I think the statistics are pretty well known at this point, that you see losses anywhere between 20 to 40%. So that's where this program SUGAM comes in. So with the support of India Climate Collaborative and Clean Cooling Collaborative, Sea Kinetics has been running this program since last year, early 2024. We also have several partners in the program. AAA is one of our partners as well. So we understand that there is demand for cooling in the perishables value chain. But the issue with that is a lot of times this is latent, this is disaggregated. So unless we are able to aggregate this demand and bring it to the forefront and bring the OEMs, the technology providers, policymakers along, we'll never see the kind of scale that's required for this intervention, in this case micro cold storage, to take off. And that's where we felt like SUGAM can make a difference. And the program is designed as such to create that, to aggregate the latent demand. And while doing that, we wanted the farmers to access sustainable technology, sustainable cooling to the extent possible. So through the program, we look at micro cold storages of the size 5 to 20 metric ton on farm or near farm. And these are largely solar-based and biomass-based. So that's how it has been designed. We work on a cluster level approach with resource institutions on ground who are normally non-profits or federated FPOs, etc. We work with partners such as AAA to create the policy connects, because there is also a requirement of aligning with the policies which exist and sort of filling in gaps where it does not exist. There are bottlenecks with respect to financing because, for example, renewable energy-based micro cold storages, it's not that familiar to the financing ecosystem. It's, so that kind of familiarity, aligning with government schemes and policies, for example, PMFME, AIF, etc. So this entire ecosystem needs to be addressed, and the program has been designed in such a way that it addresses each of these elements. So I think our learnings per se from the program has been, even if all of this exists, one of the major aspects is the utilization. So unless the farmers are actually able to use the cold storage, so in a lot of installations, we've seen that within the first year, maybe you see 1 to 2 cycles of utilization, which will lead to a payback of more than 4 years, which is not ideal. So we have been working on providing market linkages, getting off-take agreements going, getting retail or institutional buyers to come in and provide that market linkage through which the farmers are actually able to avoid this cold produce, be able to access better market rates through this cold produce, while also avoiding spoilage as well as getting better incomes from this. So the program has many facets to it, and all of it is directly connected to post-harvest loss, better incomes, better quality of produce, directly or indirectly.
Thank you. I think I think both of you brought in very important points on post-harvest losses and how intervention at the farm or near farm works great, and also there's need for more adoption, of course. This intervention is quite at a nascent stage right now. People are learning about it, picking it up, and of course we are looking for climate benefits still. Now moving on to food waste, which happens like later in the supply chain after the food moves from farm, wholesale, and then it goes to retail and then consumption side. So food loss is something that happens early on while food waste is later. So now moving the conversation to food waste, and particularly here the landfill discussion and how it's disposed comes in a lot. So I would ask Dheeraj from C40 on how are the Indian cities within C40 network integrating food waste reduction and management into their broader climate and urban sustainability agendas, particularly in relation to greenhouse gas emissions?
Right. Well, thank you for that question. And I guess perfect line of questions is we started with post-harvest losses and then gradually coming to when it enters into cities territory to manage and reduce waste. I guess I can confidently say that if you look at the climate action plans of the cities that at least we have been involved, and even beyond that, beyond the C40 cities network, all of the climate action plans, say Mumbai, Ahmedabad, Bangalore or Chennai, you will find a proper chapter on waste and the strategies and the targets set for organic waste diversion from landfilling. So cities do understand the importance of food loss and waste reduction and management as a climate lever. Not only like gone are the days a decade back where it was more of making cities visually clean and disposing the waste and out of sight, out of mind kind of mindset. That was a decade back situation, but now cities do understand that this is not only a visual cleanliness thing, it's beyond that, and it's a climate lever and a climate action altogether. What difference does it make at the city level is that once you have all these targets in your climate action plans, and now we are also supporting cities on climate budgeting. So you're not only putting up targets, but you're identifying what actions you need to take to achieve those targets, and you're budgeting those activities also at the city level. So now, compared to the previous time, now you have a more structured system and all these conversations integrated into your formal plans, which kind of enables you to take correct actions in the course of it. And why this urgency was understood, because our estimates also suggest that 67% of the waste sector emissions come from global south, right? And 30% of that is our region, South and West Asia region. So there is a huge opportunity, and we often call this sector as an emergency brake to keep the 1.5 degree goal alive. So that is well understood at the city level. Now, for city to say, and we were discussing about this as well, that reduction and management, right? So as per hierarchy, of course, the most optimal solution is to ensure that food waste reduction happens. If not reduction, then you kind of look at redistribution for human consumption, then animal feed, and only then comes the option of energy recovery or composting or anaerobic digestion. But what happens from the city's end is that they say, for example, Mumbai is managing 6,000 tons of waste every single day. So while they are motivated and there is interest to move beyond that segment of recycling and go up in the hierarchy on reduction side, but currently the situation is such that their efforts and time and energy is so much going into the recycling and management side that we as a group of organizations, and I guess what we are currently discussing is that organizations like us need to come in, pitch into the cities to support on the reduction side as well, because they've come from landfilling to recycling. So that's also a major shift that has happened already with the support of Swachh Bharat mission in the last decade. So one step up they've already come, but there is a scope to go further up. Two things that I would also like to share how cities are doing this transition is two critical things they are solving is one, strengthening data systems. So a decade back, if you had asked any city what kind of data sets you have versus today you ask a city what kind of data sets you have to make your decision, it's a huge difference, right? Because of Swachh Bharat mission and Sarvekshan, performance monitoring, a lot of new data sets have come in, which enables you to take the right decision at right point. So C40 also did a comprehensive study on Mumbai and Ahmedabad on what kind of waste is getting generated, where is food waste actually getting generated, how much of it, who are the generators, how is it flowing from source to disposal. Only then you can, kind of find out where are the opportunities to divert it from landfill. That's one thing. And second is cities are also establishing dedicated systems for collecting, say, hotel and kitchen waste separately. So Mumbai is now going to do that very soon. Ahmedabad already has it. So all the hotel and kitchens registered with the corporation, waste collection from these entities happens separately, right? So you can, if not reduction, at least you are ensuring that the purity of that organic waste is there, and it is taken to a processing facility. So I guess it's well integrated. Actions are still there, but moving up on the hierarchy on the reduction side is something that we need to work on.
Thanks. I think you brought in front like a very important point of the waste hierarchy. Like a lot of people are not familiar with it, especially ones who are working on food loss. But there's a waste hierarchy that's very important for even mitigating climate impacts. Like as you move up, the climate mitigation opportunity becomes more. But if you address it like at the source, like he said, like prevention of food waste, then the opportunity for climate mitigation is huge. So it also depends on where you address the problem rather than, investing in it in more to transport it, to process it. So it's very important where the intervention is actually pointed at. So now I'll move on to Swarna, who's from EPIC, and they're doing some very interesting work on which critical nodes in the food waste management chain offer the greatest potential for climate change mitigation. And if you could lay emphasis on the climate mitigation opportunity at each stage, that'll be great.
Hello. Thanks, Shweta. The one thing that Dheeraj mentioned, finally we are seeing solid waste becoming a part of the local climate action plans. That itself is a very good starting point, because until and unless something is mentioned, it's difficult to move the needle at a city or ULB level. Keeping that in mind, and also the kind of work that we are doing at EPIC, like we are looking at the municipal solid waste management chain to be precise, there's a lot of potential. There are actually multiple critical intervention points where climate mitigation potential lies, especially for an Indian context where the waste in general, the percentage of organic in it is 60-65%. That's humongous, and that organic includes food waste and fuel, different kinds. That itself becomes a very interesting starting point for South Asia, and I would say ASEAN, compared to the developed part. So this is where we say India has a lot of emissions, or South Asia has a lot of methane emissions. It's all coming because of the composition of waste that ends in the landfill. Now coming to the critical nodes, from what we have understood on the ground, broadly I can say there are like 4 nodes, critical nodes that we can take cognizance of, kind of work around it. First, I think everyone would agree, is segregation at source. When we say that, it includes households, it includes bulk waste generators. Why is it important? Once you have organic waste separate, it helps in the downstream, processing activities. So if you whatever you're going to do with that organic waste, the cleaner it is, the more revenue can be generated, more cleaner outputs can be generated. If that doesn't happen, what ends up happening is it contaminates the recyclables also. So then, apart from the recyclables, which we could have kind of taken back, there is increase like X plus delta X amount of waste that is reaching the landfill directly. So that itself become a problem. Like let's see, and this is from a high household. Azadpur Mandi is like 20 kilometers from here, biggest wholesale market in Asia for fruits, vegetables, and everything. If they do not, and there's a lot of food loss that happens there. Like even if we say a number wise 20%, X 100 tons of food waste, if they don't do anything about it in situ, it automatically enters the municipal solid waste system. Now, the moment it enters that system, There's nothing that the the ULBs can do about it because it has already gotten mixed. Segregation is not possible. The recyclables are again contaminated, and where it ends? In the landfill. And what is happening in the landfill? The methane emissions along with other co-pollutants. That itself, like methane, we know 84 times more potent than carbon dioxide in 20. Like, I mean, the numbers, just give an example of Ghazipur here. On an hourly basis, 1.75 tons of methane emission happens. That is humongous. That is like almost like 500-kilometer running of a typical car. So just imagine the kind of emissions that are happening, which because we don't see it, we don't talk about it. There's a lot of climate potential there. First, like I said, it's a segregation. Second, in the node, I won't say it's a part of the system. It's a group. Basically, it's the informal workers. They, yes, we have a typical, I mean, I also personally feel that like even if we segregate at home, end of the day, it goes in the bin and it gets mixed. But it's not their mistake because they don't have that space to segregate. They don't have that infrastructure. They're not recognized in the system itself. Whereas the informal waste economy of India handles majority of the recycling and the sorting. So if we don't have the institutional setup to support them, how can we kind of blame them to, mix it all together? So if they become those ambassadors, which has happened in Indore and all, that itself becomes like a very, that the word climate doesn't come into play, but it automatically helps in the climate mitigation. The third node is more of an enabling node, the way I see it. It's the processing and disposal part of waste, where upstream, yes, segregation has happened. When it comes downstream, it needs to find a house. And this can only happen when we have a proper infrastructure, whether it's composting, where is biomethanation, or anything, any form of energy conversion possibility. But if this infrastructure doesn't exist, because this has been a question at a lot of ULBs that they've questioned, like what will we do, like by segregating so much of waste if we don't have enough waste processing facility. So that itself becomes like, if we do that, there's so much of methane emission that gets diverted altogether. And the last, but not the least, and very important and interesting thing is the 20-tower, landfills that we see in most of the cities, whether it's Pirana of Ahmedabad, Ghazipur of Delhi, or Deonar of Mumbai. The thing is, they are 20, 30 years old. There is a lot of legacy waste remediation measures being adopted to get rid of the waste, but the problem is still fresh waste is going there. I mean, if you don't have the first three nodes aligned, it will not help in limiting the waste reaching the landfill. In all, if I see the four nodes together, the only way it can work is when these four nodes are aligned, they are optimized in the chain. And when they're optimized, in the optimization process, we need to bring in more systemic thinking. We need to bring very grounded policy intervention and not just saying that this needs to happen. And definitely, that capacity that they understand it's needed. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Sona. This actually gives a very interesting picture to imagine how exactly food waste is traveling and where it's really critical to address it. Also, there is this one question that comes from businesses, organizations, tech providers. How do we measure the change, how much emissions have we reduced? It's a very common question that comes to us as well, like how much emissions is this reducing? A favorite question from funders as well, what is the potential of emissions that you can reduce? So I'll ask this next question to Khushbu on how is AEEE measuring GHG emissions mitigation estimation from cooling systems. It is working on, and you previously mentioned. So how are you estimating emissions from your technologies?
So, Shweta, when we talk about modernization of the existing infra, we work on three aspects. That is, applying the lean, mean, green philosophy. Lean is to make an infrastructure in a way that it consumes less energy. Then mean is the monitoring, the measurement systems and control systems get in place and everything, so that you know that you can measure, you can see wherever energy consumption is happening can be reduced. And then green is applying or integrating the renewables. So on these three aspects, when we talk about modernization, we see that just by making the infrastructure in a way that the insulation is kept is fine, airtight doors are there, and the orientation of the building is such that less of heat loss or the cooling loss happens. It itself reduces the energy consumption by 20 to 30%. That will reflect in the emissions just by lean. Then mean is if you are having these monitoring systems, these PLC controllers in place, then the temperature that is required is maintained to the appropriate needs, and it is not going beyond what is needed, which usually is the cases in the existing cold stores. The temperature that is needed for these potatoes to be stored in these cold storage is roughly, I would say, 5 to 7 degrees, 10 degrees. However, if you see the difference on the ground floor and the top floor, it's at top floor sometimes the temperature that is maintained is even in the negatives. So you are actually consuming more energy when it is not needed, and that is also spoiling the produce. The potatoes in gunny bags that are kept on the top floors are usually developing fungus on them. So you are consuming energy more, also releasing more emissions when it is not needed. So a lean mean is this, and then green is by using solar energy or by using biomass. You can also reduce the energy consumption that is coming up. 70 to 90% of diesel generators are getting shut off or not being used because of having the energy consumption energy source coming from the solar energy. So these are like some of the ways that we are trying to estimate emissions in all, if we talk about the modernization program.
Very interesting. Also, there's a very common question that people generally have, like, does cooling adds to emissions? Because there's no cooling right now. There's absolutely no cooling at the farm
Right.
level. So does that adds to emission, or what is your take just for that question?
I would maybe answer it in a way that what are some of the benefits that it is leading to? Definitely, if we are investing in any energy that is coming from these solutions, it will add to some emissions. But then if we also are seeing that these are the benefits, the food loss that was happening maybe 100 metric ton, for example, is now getting reduced to 60, in itself is an important thing. Right. Similarly, if the energy consumption that was coming from grid was can be reduced to 20 to 30%, at times 40% by just adding renewables, by modernizing these facilities. Again, the larger benefit is more. Also, when a number of time people confuse with energy as an expenditure, or keeping these large cold stores, for example, as an expenditure, what they are also not doing is making the infrastructure efficient enough that it is not consuming what it should not be consuming. So modernization is one way that you can not just make the infrastructure that has already been put money on and being utilized to the maximum limit, 80 to 90%, rather than just leaving them as it is and creating a new one. So, yeah.
Right. Thanks. That's helpful. So I'll move on to Dheeraj next. And the question is basically, can you share some examples of urban level circular economy initiatives that reduce or manage food waste and offer replicable climate benefits? And also, if you have assessed the impact of the climate benefits in these.
Sure, I can give 3 examples, I guess, and very recent ones. So in Ahmedabad, we got to know when we did that mass flow analysis, which I was talking about, basically understanding what kind of waste is generated at what place in the city and where is it flowing from source to disposal. And once you have that, scenario built up in front of you, you can identify where is my diversion opportunity, right? This was going to, for example, say landfill. I could have diverted it to a new processing facility and establish a circular economy model. What we realized in Ahmedabad that a particular waste stream, which is meat waste from shops which is selling meat, that was getting mixed in the universal collection of the city, the regular collection of the city, which was causing two problems. One, because it was getting mixed with other waste, it was contaminating not only the meat waste itself, but the other waste streams. And we don't have so much of automation at our RTS, which is the transfer station. So people manually sorting, they don't want to sort further. So the efficiency of sorting goes down, right? And the second thing is that meat waste, which is otherwise considered as a nutrient-rich material, you're wasting it because you're mixing it with other waste and it's going on to the landfill. And again, it's organic, it's food waste, right? So we identified that stream going to landfill and figured out a way to kind of divert that to a new processing facility to not only process meat waste, but to produce something called meat bone meal, which is a requirement for a pet food production company, right? So in a way, a circular economy coming from food waste, getting back to pet food production. And for doing that, the city, what we supported them for doing this is that we identified all meat shops in the city, formal, informal, located, geotagged them on the map, and then identified how much waste is each of that vendor is generating. Usually, if there is a big vendor, they become bulk waste generator, hotel, restaurants. So city know about them. But these smaller vendors and shops, which cumulatively generate a lot of food waste, they go unnoticed. So we kind of identified all these shops and vendors and identified how much meat waste they're generating. And now we are in process of supporting city in establishing a meat waste processing facility which will generate meat bone meal. And when we, because you asked for impact, when we saw this, the ROI of investment is just in like 4 years you could recover, because the demand of MBM in market is huge. So the pedigree or whoever is developing the pet food products is having that, supply is welcomed. So that is one thing, and city is now rather thinking of getting royalty from the operator who will be coming and setting up this plant. So a clear circular economy model, not only saving emissions, because otherwise this would have landed up in a landfill, but also an opportunity to earn, and involvement of the private sector because you're selling it off. That's one example. Second is, again, in Ahmedabad only, that, as I said, the big mandis, what Swarna was also mentioning, they are often bulk waste generators, governed by a particular system, a city or state level. But the small vendors, which are, outside your residential areas or any commercial areas, there are often clusters. So they individually do not become bulk waste generators, but if you consider them as cluster, they are generating more waste than a bulk waste generator. So Ahmedabad is now identifying all such spots, similarly to meat waste, all such spots where food waste is happening, like vegetable and fruit markets, clusters of that, and now diverting from the same logic, diverting that particular food waste to a new biomethanation or composting facility. So I guess these are some models where, establishing systems for a dedicated waste stream enables the circular economy at the city level. Also in Mumbai, I can share that, Mumbai is coming up with Asia's biggest bio-CNG plant, which will have one of the key feedstock would be the food waste. Now, I know we are talking about food waste reduction, but considering the current scenario and the waste generation rising, that is 1,000 tons per day. Now, to ensure that the operator gets that purity and 1,000 tons of waste every single day is such a task for city, right? If they fail to deliver that pure organic waste, they get penalized. The city gets penalized. So it is the city's responsibility to deliver food waste in its purity, and only then the bio-CNG quality can be maintained. So that's a circular economy model, but cities' stakes are high. So for them also, we are identifying, and now Mumbai is going to onboard new collection transportation agencies who will be mandated to collect separately from hotel, kitchen, the HoReCa industries, right? So in a way, we have moved up in the ladder, again, I would say waste hierarchy, that at least, if not reduction, we have started identifying streams separately, collecting them separately and processing them separately. And I guess the next step would then obviously be that now we know which vendor, which hotel, which restaurant is generating how much, and then we motivate them and spread awareness about reduction potential and the benefits about that, and then we move that ladder up. So I guess those are some examples.
Very interesting. And it's great to see how much we have progressed moving up the ladder, and of course there's a long way to go. Next I'll move to Swarna for discussion, like any thoughts on what are the targeted intervention at the collection disposal stages? You previously mentioned that can reduce food waste, and also are there any successful example of policy or community-led interventions?
So, at the collection stage, I think the idea is to create that enabling environment for segregation to happen. Like Dheeraj mentioned, Ahmedabad, Mumbai, and few other cities, they have identified different kinds of bulk waste generators and addressing. But one big source of waste are still households, where most of the contaminant, like not contamination, but then the waste is not segregated. Uh, if we want to look at the enabling environment for segregation to happen here, multiple levers work, but one thing, I mean, EPIC, because we work a lot on economics also, we feel incentive model does work, but incentives also vary. So for example, just giving, sharing about the work that we are doing at EPIC, we are not targeting the households directly. The next important group in the chain are the waste workers who are doing the actual segregation. They're already doing it because that's their source of revenue from the recyclables. But what we are trying to do is using some economic tools, trying to assess how can we improve the quality of the sorting quality. And when we say sorting quality, we are talking about organic waste, not the recyclables. Recyclables, they know the best. But because they don't see any value in the organic. So if we can provide some kind of incentives to them to improve that sorting also. So what it would do is, obviously, we'll have cleaner waste at different stages, but at the same time, the organics that are kind of recovered from it, them of much higher quality, and they have much more end uses. So there is a cost element which is invisible, not tapped into until now, and we're trying to see if this model can, be like, prove an economies of scale, as in, yes, if it's happening at a pilot at 3 or 4 wards level, if we kind of scale it to, 5 or 6 zones in Delhi or any other city, what is the amount that we are giving as incentive versus what we are getting back in return, where we also tap into the climate mitigation potential and, what is the like the cost that we are avoiding from different emissions. So that's one way of, that we are looking at it. But just saying, incentives are no silver bullet. This is my personal opinion. Incentives are like more transitional in nature, strategy, until unless we have been able to establish the other end, which are households here. They have been able to, go through that behavioral change exercises and have gotten you're used to the segregation. Until that happens, we need to find something in between, and incentives work. That's around collection. There are other things also that's happening. Dheeraj had mentioned about how data sets, the expansion of data sets, Bangalore, Delhi, Mumbai, name it, the cities, all of them have a very strong data monitoring system. They have GIS-based route rationalization. All these things are happening. What it is doing is creating a very good information data set, which will also help in creating a feedback mechanism for compliance. The problem right now is, and I remember seeing C40's work, they just tapped into the potential of the data that Mumbai was getting. Same we felt for Delhi, which would inform so many actions. But then what is happening is aggregation of data, because this data collection is being outsourced to private agencies. They just give it to the ULBs, and ULBs just keep aggregating it. Until unless you use that data to inform, your feedback mechanism for the compliance still stays on paper. They say there's a very high potential on, making something work around it, but that's not happening. And there are more things happening. I mean, the Swachh Doot initiative of Indore, where they identified waste collectors at the ambassadors. I mean, so many ways things can happen. Coming to the disposal side, again, because it's the downstream, until unless we have a more decentralized approach, and we de-risk the food loss aspect, I don't think things are gonna work, because cities come up with, 1,000 tons of, this plant and that plant. the movement itself is a big challenge. That itself is a very, very big cost. The decentralized, when you have ward level composting or biomethanation aspects, it has worked. It has worked for many smaller cities. The one rationale that is brought up by ULBs are we don't have the space. I think we have the space. It's just that we have not been able to, we don't want to go to that decentralized model. So if we look into that, I think definitely there's a lot of potential. Just saying food waste, I mean, we need a rethinking and rewiring, from a third mile perspective. We have to see waste as a resource. Like food loss, okay, it has happened. Now it has become waste. Waste needs to become a resource. The waste workers and others, actors involved in it have to become the, resource managers. That's when the infrastructure will start talking. Otherwise, it's never gonna talk. It will still be siloed and things will not move.
That's a very interesting way to look at it. Also, totally agree, incentives work great, and especially in the start. They give very good results, and it's very motivating, but they do not solve the structural problems that are there. So incentive can be just a value add, but not the problem, like the solution itself. So building on that, what kind of enabling ecosystem across policy, finance, and institution is needed to scale climate smart solutions that address food loss and waste across the value chain? I'll pass on to Malvika to talk about her experience from the project that she has worked on.
Thanks, Shweta. So I think when I initially answered, I brought in a lot of challenges that we are seeing in this space. So if we look at just micro cold storages, renewable energy based micro cold storages, there is a market potential of anywhere between 2.6 to 3.2 billion US dollars in the coming decade. But for that to be actually tapped into, there needs to be that demand aggregation that needs to happen. And of course, policy is one of the most key enabling elements in that. The fragmented latent demand that we see, policymakers can play a huge role in sort of aggregating it through a cohesive policy framework. MNRE did make an attempt at the larger DRE or distributed renewable energy based applications when it comes to productive uses, which we call as pure. But that framework did not go through, or it did not take off. So unless you have a framework that is rooted in reality and implementable, and you bring in the right partners. For example, if we are speaking about micro cold storages or any agri-related productive use of renewable energy, there are multiple government departments, agencies, ministries that are involved, because there is an aspect of livelihood which brings in a rural development ministry, MORD, there is NRLM, then there is Ministry of Renewable Energy. So the Ministry of Agriculture. So there's so many stakeholders who have skin in this game, but unless everyone is working together on this, it often remains limited to silos and different programs. And again, when it comes to states, some states do have targets for cold storage access. Bihar is one example where the Veg Fed is working. Khushbu is well aware of this. They want to make micro cold storages accessible to all the vegetable federation, the primary societies. Maharashtra has targets. They have had programs in the past, and they're still ongoing. So, but we don't see a national level framework that brings things together based on local context, local requirement, and aligning with the social collateral. What can drive that uptake on ground when it's linked to livelihoods, when it's directly linked to incomes? The social collateral on ground, that's what will lead to uptake in this case. So policy definitely is one of the key aspects which can play an enabling role in this. And then comes finance. Like I mentioned earlier, because a lot of these technologies, for example, micro cold storages or bulk milk chillers, again, solar dryers, all of which can directly contribute to reducing food loss and emissions. So a lot of these are still in nascent stages, even though there are over 200 stakeholders working on this ecosystem. Financiers are still not convinced about the bankability of these. So one, we need to demonstrate the bankability that there is return of investment, and there is a payback period which is actually feasible, 3 to 4 years, which we see is possible when that entire value chain comes together. We do see it's possible. For example, in one of our installations in Maharashtra, with just 3 to 4 months of utilization, we see that they were able to pay the 20 metric ton system back with just 3 to 4 cycles of mango ripening and cooling. But we also see installations which have paybacks of more than 5 or 6 years. But I think we had an interesting observation from one of the financiers in a convening we had 2 weeks ago on productive use of renewable energy. In fact, he said that we do finance some of them, but right now we finance at CAPEX looking at the ability to pay back of the borrower, not the technology as such. That works for some, that's great, but it may not work for an FPO who is not able to show a balance sheet that is strong enough, who's just gotten into 1 or 2 years of fruits and vegetable aggregation. So a lot of first-time borrowers, a lot of women, a lot of SHGs kept out of the system by default. And Khushbu can vouch for this. We have been trying to provide financial access to a lot of potential infra owners in the scheme, in the program. And a lot of times to access government schemes, the kind of documentation that's required, the kind of credit history or the kind of history that they need to show on paper, that is lacking, and that thereby they get ruled out from accessing formal credit. So financing is a key gap, and there is a lot of, I think the ecosystem itself has to develop, and that's where donor capital comes into play. I think there have been a lot of programs in this space, and WRI itself has also attempted a couple of program in this space, so you're well aware of this. So if we work together on developing that ecosystem which recognizes these gaps and plug it at an ecosystem level, things become much easier. And lastly, I just want to mention that even on the technology front, different OEMs provide different specifications. It's not necessarily possible that an end user, farmer, understands what this means for them. Or the implementing agencies, for example, the government departments who put out the tenders for these. It's not necessary that there is capacity. And also a lot of times there is no local capacity to service in case of a breakdown. So even on the technology front, there are several gaps when it comes to the capacity building, local capacity to service, the servicing network, etc. So when all of these comes together, that's when that market potential that we see gets tapped into, and that's when cooling will become accessible. Sustainable cooling will become accessible to the ecosystem and the communities.
Thank you so much. Just being conscious of time moving forward, but I think this discussion has been very useful and very engaging. And we agree, partnership and collaboration is the way to go. This is one attempt of ours to bring everyone together and have a discussion about it. On your point, finance, we are having a discussion around it tomorrow as well. We are having this panel discussion, particularly on finance, to discuss the role of finance. I think nobody can ignore finance to work on any issue. So thank you so much for your very insightful comments and sharing your experiences. Pass it back to Anar for a vote of, and thank you again for a very interesting discussion.
Is it working? Yeah. So as we wrap up, I would like to thank our speakers and moderator. And very interesting perspectives have been shared, picking up out the many layers of the problem. How do we modernize post-harvest infrastructure, make cooling available in a sustainable, energy efficient way? On the waste side, it was interesting to note how we can make available and accessible many of the upstream segregation and downstream disposal and processing. And these are all very climate smart ways to reduce food loss and waste, and also reduce GHG emissions. And interestingly, how we look at waste is also essential. Food waste as a resource would really talk about mindset shift. And I think this is a step forward in working together to develop a conducive ecosystem, as Malvika said, to support such initiatives. So on that note, I would really like to thank all of you, audiences both online and offline in the room. Your participation has really made this session very engaging. And I would like to invite all of you for a group photo, please. And we also have a small token of appreciation for you.